When you have a pet at home, it's only natural for a bond to form over time, but the story with the dog is a little different. With this animal, it's not just about a connection. They can become our best friends. In life, love, friendship, and other relationships may break and be rebuilt, but a dog stays with us until its very last breath. Even if a person abandons their pet dog, the loyal creature will wait for its owner forever. We have seen many such stories. It is often said that a dog is a man's best friend, and this movie reaffirms that truth. So, without further ado, let's get into the story. At the beginning of the movie, we see a dog in the city of Seattle, Washington. He is living out the final moments of his life, waiting for his owner and friend, Denny. The dog's name is Enzo, named after Enzo Ferrari, the famous racing driver and founder of the Ferrari company. Just then, Denny arrives. He sees that Enzo can't move, so he gently picks him up and sits with him on the sofa. They start watching TV together. At that moment, Enzo thinks to himself, "If I had the power to speak, I would tell Denny not to worry about me." I once saw a documentary on TV where Mongolians believe that if a creature lives its whole life as a dog, it might be reborn as a human in its next life. I know I might lose my memories and experiences, but I have a plan. I will try to imprint everything I know onto my soul. I will try to remember everything in my next life. Enzo further reflects. I may not be human, but my life wasn't easy either. I have lived with humans, witnessed life's many changes up close, and learned a great deal. The scene then cuts, and the story goes into a flashback, where we see Enzo as a very young puppy. Denny instantly takes a liking to Enzo and adopts the little pup. In a very short time, a deep bond forms between them. Denny considered Enzo his lucky charm. He showered Enzo with affection, and Enzo, in turn, began to understand Denny's life and grew to love everything about it. Besides being a race car driver, Denny also taught car driving. He divided his time, giving half of it to Enzo. Enzo was very happy with Denny because he always tried to keep him by his side. Denny even took Enzo to the racing track where he competed. There, Enzo understood just how much Denny loved his profession, car racing. He also discovered that Denny had a special ability. He could drive effortlessly in the rain, a feat that is both very difficult and dangerous. As time went on, Denny and Enzo grew even closer. They were inseparable. One day, while shopping, Denny meets a girl named Eve. Denny falls for her at first sight, something Enzo picks up on. Consequently, Enzo doesn't like Eve very much, as he doesn't want to share his best friend, Denny, with anyone. However, Denny and Eve's relationship deepens over time. Eve starts attending all of Denny's competitions, and Denny wins every single one. He was at the peak of his career. Eventually, Denny and Eve decide to get married. They have a beautiful wedding by the sea, where Enzo is made the chief guest. Enzo now fully accepts them as his family, and they become a truly happy unit. Soon after, Eve's parents arrive. Eve's father isn't very fond of Danny because Danny is a car racing driver, a profession with a lot of inherent risks. However, Eve's mother is quite fond of Danny. While the parents are discussing this, Enzo overhears their conversation. Enzo then thinks to himself, "Humans might consider me a helpless, voiceless creature, but I can understand their words and sense their feelings." Several months pass, and Eve becomes pregnant. Danny and Enzo are overjoyed by this news. As Danny realizes his family is growing and his responsibilities are increasing, he starts racing even more frequently to earn more money. Consequently, Danny couldn't dedicate much time to Enzo. But during this period, Eve keeps Enzo company, showering him with affection and spending quality time with him. Enzo, for his part, tries to be as supportive as possible. Time continues to pass, and now Eve's delivery is imminent. Just then, Danny receives an invitation for a car competition from Japan. They had been waiting for such a golden opportunity for a long time. However, Danny was extremely reluctant to leave Eve in such a state. Eve then reassures him, "This is incredibly important for your career. you should definitely participate in this competition, and I'll be perfectly fine here." Reassured by Eve's words, Danny departs for the competition. While Danny was competing, Eve's labor pains began. Enzo was watching Danny's competition on TV. Seeing Eve in such pain, Enzo rushed to her side, feeling terrible. Soon after, Eve gives birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom she names Joy. Eve introduces Enzo to Joy and says, "Enzo, she's also part of your family. You will always protect her." Enzo is incredibly happy to see Joy. He had never seen such a tiny, beautiful baby before. A day later, Enzo senses that Danny has returned. He runs to the window and sees that Danny has indeed arrived. Enzo goes to Danny, but Danny, not noticing Enzo, walks straight to his daughter. Although Enzo feels a little hurt by this, Danny's return is what truly brings him immense joy. Slowly, time passes and Joy grows up. Enzo always takes great care of Joy. Enzo feels as if he is Joy's elder brother. 7 years pass this way. Now Danny wants to give up his racing career, which deeply saddens and surprises Enzo, as Enzo knows how much Danny loves his racing. Eve also knows this, so she tells Danny, "You shouldn't give up your passion." The next morning, Enzo goes to Eve for food. Eve was taking medicine at that moment. Enzo then realizes that Eve might be unwell. He could smell something burnt coming from her. He wants to tell his friend Jenny about this, but Enzo is mute. He cannot convey anything about this to anyone. Danny comes home at night. He is also very tense because his car racing career isn't going well either. He keeps losing one race after another. And Enzo understands this as well. Danny also doesn't tell anyone about his struggles. Both Eve and Danny suppressed their pain within themselves. Only Enzo could feel both their pains simultaneously, but he was helpless to do anything. One day, Danny sees Eve watching old racing videos where Danny was racing in the rain. Danny asks her, "How can you do all this?" Danny explained, "When I drive in the rain, the car slips. But before it can go out of control, I intentionally make it slip so that I can take control of it myself." The next morning, Eve's health deteriorated significantly. She decided to take Zoe and go to her parents' house. In their haste, they completely forgot that Enzo was left all alone at home. Enzo became terribly hungry, but there was no one to feed him. Even in this state, he kept himself calm. He saw the neighbors through the window and tried to bark for help, but with the windows closed, no one could hear him. Enzo survived for nearly 40 hours by eating scraps of food from the floor and eventually drinking water from the toilet bowl. Later, he went into Zoe's room and began to hallucinate. He saw all of Zoe's toys come to life as evil fighters that could harm her. That night, a heavy storm raged with loud thunder and lightning. Terrified, Enzo hid in a corner of the house. When Denny returned home in the morning, he found Enzo in a miserable condition. He gave him food and immediately called Eve. Eve rushed back home and apologized to Enzo. However, when Zoe went to her room, she found that Enzo had torn all her toys apart. Scared and heartbroken, Zoe started crying. This sent Denny into a rage, and he scolded Enzo harshly. In truth, Denny was also going through a tough time, as his racing career was not going well. Eve stopped Denny, but a hurt Enzo ran outside. He was confused, unable to understand when he had destroyed the toys. He had only hallucinated that the toys were destroying themselves. As Denny sat outside, filled with regret, Enzo came back to him. Denny realized his mistake and held Enzo, showering him with affection. Enzo forgave Denny. The next day, Denny had to leave again for a racing competition. Eve was home alone. While she was out for a walk with Enzo, she suddenly fell ill and collapsed, unconscious. Enzo barked loudly for help until some people noticed and took Eve to the hospital. There, Denny received the devastating news. His beloved wife had terminal cancer and was in the final stage. Denny was shattered. Enzo could feel all of his pain. He thought to himself that life is like a race car. Sometimes the track is smooth and other times it's rough, but if the driver is skilled, they can win even with that car. Denny had to do the same. Eve had to stay in the hospital for a while longer. Meanwhile, Denny started taking care of their daughter, Zoe, at home. At first he struggled, but with time, he learned to manage everything perfectly. A few days later, Eve was discharged and came home, but she looked very weak. Denny loved Eve immensely and dedicated all his time to his family, trying to keep her happy. However, Eve realized she didn't have much time left. During Christmas, she made Denny promise that he would never give up in life. Then she said, "I want to dance with you." They danced together, a moment Eve cherished. Later that night, as Eve lay in bed, Enzo was by her side. Eve looked at him and said, "You know I'm not afraid of death, because I know this isn't the end." After saying this, Eve passed away peacefully. The next morning, Denny discovered that Eve was gone. He was completely devastated and heartbroken. Enzo thought, "I watched Eve pass away last night. I tried so hard to stop it, but I couldn't." Of course, Denny couldn't understand any of this. Everyone went to say their final goodbyes to Eve, leaving Enzo alone at home. Enzo would often look at Eve's picture and cry, because he too loved her dearly and missed her terribly. Their life had changed completely. Denny's once happy, cheerful family was no more. Danny's life is now filled with nothing but sorrow, frustration, and melancholy. To make matters worse, Eve's parents blame Danny for Eve's death. They accuse him of not spending enough time with Eve due to his wrestling career. Consequently, they no longer want Joy to live with Danny and intend to seek full custody of their granddaughter. This infuriates Danny. After Eve, Joy is the only one left in his life. Moreover, as Joy's father, Danny believes he understands her better than anyone else. Their arguments escalate. At one point, Eve's father grabs Danny's arm, and as Danny tries to pull his hand away, Eve's father injures his leg. Seizing this opportunity, Eve's father files a police complaint against Danny. The police arrest Danny. Although he is released on bail, Joy's custody is granted to Eve's parents. Danny will not be allowed to see his daughter even once for 3 months. This news completely shatters Danny. The house where he once lived with his wife and daughter now feels empty, for he is all alone. Only his beloved dog, Enzo, remains by his side. Danny meticulously arranges Joy's drawings throughout the house so that whenever he thinks of Joy, he can feel her presence. Enzo too notices that Danny has never been so utterly broken. On weekends, Danny sends Enzo to visit Joy. Joy is overjoyed to see Enzo, and they spend hours playing and having fun together. Spending time with Joy, Enzo also clearly understands that no one could care for her as well as Danny. After the weekend, Mike, Enzo's friend, brings Enzo back to Danny, who is at his racing track. Enzo hasn't been there in years. As a puppy, he used to visit often with Danny, and the place felt like a second home to him. Meanwhile, a manager from Ferrari approaches Danny. He says, "I want you to test drive our new Ferrari model." During the test drive, Danny showcases his exceptional skill. Everyone watches his driving in awe. He is then offered a job at Ferrari to test drive all their vehicles. Danny explains, "I'm currently facing some legal charges and am out on bail, so I'm not permitted to leave this city. Otherwise, I would have certainly accepted this offer." The manager hands him his card, saying, "Call me the moment those charges are cleared." The scene then shifts. 3 long months later, Danny is finally allowed to see his daughter. His daughter Joy is equally thrilled to see him. Danny's daughter Joy unequivocally states that she wishes to live with her father, not her grandparents. However, Danny would not be able to see his daughter even on weekends, as the custody battle is still ongoing. Furthermore, criminal charges are still pending against him. Danny's lawyer advises him, "We should drop this case. At least that way you'll be able to see your daughter on weekends. If you lose this case, you'll lose your daughter permanently." Danny begins to despair, believing he might not win the case. given the criminal charges against him and his lack of sufficient funds to cover the legal costs, he becomes utterly frustrated and begins running aimlessly in the pouring rain. Enzo couldn't bear to leave Danny alone in such a state, so he too runs after Danny through the downpour. It is then that Enzo is hit by a car. Danny rushes Enzo to the hospital, where the vet informs Danny Enzo is old, and the accident caused severe internal bleeding. It's a miracle Enzo even survived this, but I don't think he has much time left. His last remaining support, his loyal dog, was now also fading away. Amidst this overwhelming sorrow, pain, and utter despair, Danny makes the heartbreaking decision to drop his custody case for joy. The lawyer hands Danny a legal paper, and he signs it. His dog, Enzo, watches the entire scene unfold. Unwilling to accept Zoe being separated from Denny, Enzo snatches the paper in his mouth, runs outside, and tears it to shreds. Denny realizes that Enzo doesn't want him to give up. He wants Denny to fight for the case. Resolved, Denny decides to fight, remembering the promise he made to his late wife, Eve, that he would never give up on life. A few days later, Denny goes to court for the custody hearing. There, Eve's mother has a change of heart, realizing that they are being unfair to Denny and that he should not be separated from his daughter. She drops all the criminal charges against him. As a result, Denny easily wins full custody of Zoe. Overjoyed after such a long struggle, Denny is happier than he has been in years. Enzo is equally thrilled. He seems to communicate to Denny that he won because he took a risk, and taking risks is the hallmark of a great race car driver. Time passes, and Zoe is now 9 years old. It's her birthday, and Denny bakes a cake for her with his own hands. Zoe's grandparents also attend the party. Forgetting all past bitterness, Denny welcomes them warmly. The happy family of Denny, Zoe, and Enzo is whole again. Soon after, Denny gets a call from the Ferrari racing team with a job offer, which he accepts. Happiness finally returns to his life. The scene then shifts to the present, where an old Enzo is living out his final days. He silently wishes that in his next life, he will remember the life he has lived. Denny decides to take Enzo for one last long drive. The next morning, they head out. Enzo savors every moment as if it's his last journey. Denny tells him, "You are the best friend I've ever had. Please always stay with me." At that moment, Enzo muses that perhaps dogs have shorter lives so they can teach humans how to truly live and love. The story then jumps forward 8 years. Enzo is no longer in this world. Zoe is now a young woman, and Denny is a renowned driver for Ferrari. One day, Zoe brings a little boy to meet him, a huge fan of Denny's. The boy's father explains that his son dreams of becoming a racer just like Denny. When Denny asks the boy his name, he replies, "My name is Enzo." Hearing the name, Denny is overcome with emotion, remembering his old friend. He gives the young boy his autograph along with his phone number and tells his father, "When he is ready to drive, bring him to me. I will teach him myself." The boy is ecstatic. As the boy and his father are leaving, he turns back to look at Denny. In that moment, Denny sees a reflection of his beloved friend, Enzo, in the child. It feels as if Enzo has returned to spend another lifetime with him, and this time, they will never be separated. The story ends here.